Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, April 16th, just past the midway point of the month of April, and yet two parts of the nation are getting accumulating snow right now. Up across New England, especially in those higher elevation locations, are getting some heavy, wet, accumulating snow, and out over the Rocky Mountains into the western part of the Central Plains are getting some snow as well. Let's start off with a look at the radar loop from Intellicast.com. Two areas of interest here with respect to the snow. Here we are in the northeastern part of the nation. All the blue here from eastern New York State up across New England is snow, and some of it's coming down heavily at times, especially in those higher elevations of the Adirondacks, the Berkshire Mountains, the Green and White Mountains of New England. This is a mid-April heavy wet snowfall all day today across the interior northeastern part of the nation, focused on New England. This system is moving very, very slowly as it has encountered a blocking pattern that we've talked about over the past several days that has set up across the northeastern part of Canada. Meanwhile, out in the central and western states, a large area of some snow here from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Central Plains. And again, some of this is accumulating snow. Denver right now is 29 degrees, and you have to pity the New York Mets. They were rained out yesterday in New York City, flew all the way to Denver. They have a game scheduled there today and another one tomorrow, and very cold with some snow showers. Whether or not they'll play is another question. Some strong thunderstorms out in the warm sector across Oklahoma into the northeastern part of Texas. So kind of a wintry look to the radar map this morning, Friday, April 16th. Well, let's take a look at last night's operational run of the GFS at 6Z, and this cold air that stretches now from the interior west, these Rocky Mountain states, all the way into the east is not the cold air outbreak that's not the last cold air outbreak that will make it into the central and eastern states. In fact, it looks like a cold pattern relative to normal for this time of the year for the eastern two-thirds of the nation for at least the next 10 days, maybe the next 14 days or so, and we'll get some kind of an indication of that by looking at the forecast maps of the 850 millibar temperature anomalies. These are temperature anomalies a couple thousand feet off the ground level, but typically translate to the same kind of pattern seen at the surface. Here we are below normal, again extending all the way from the Rocky Mountain states to the east coast here. Snow right now across New England, eastern New York State, snow eastern Colorado into the Central Plains, and watch what happens as we just push forward here through the next 10 days or 14 days or so. Here we are. This is now Sunday afternoon, still colder than normal, extending from the south central U.S. all the way to the northeast. And look at this, another cold air outbreak on its heels, and that just charges south and east. This is way below normal for this time of the year for the northern plains. By the time we get to the early part of next week, we're looking at a Monday morning forecast map, and it has been the case with much of the winter, especially during that severe cold air outbreak in February. The central part of the nation is kind of experiencing the coldest core of the air. This is relative to normal. You see purples all the way from the northern plains down to South Texas, and colder than normal all the way into the northeast U.S. But again, the coldest core of these air masses seem to again occur in the central part of the nation. Here we go now into the mid part of next week, and this cold air outbreak just continues to expand to the south and east, finally reaching the eastern seaboard by midweek. And that is not the last one of the cold air outbreaks. Just keep moving forward here. Now we're a week away. This is a week from right now, next Friday, April 23rd. Look at that upstream, yet another cold air outbreak. Again, very cold relative to normal. That just charges south and east. This is now a week from Sunday. This is Sunday, April 25th. Still dealing with below normal conditions from Texas all the way up to New England. And look at that, another cold air mass spilling down from Canada into the northern U.S., and that too looks like it can make it into the mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. And at this point in time, we're almost at the very end of the month of April. So indeed, the next couple of weeks look like a lot of cold air outbreaks for the eastern two-thirds of the nation. Well, let's now take a look at the 500 millibar vorticity forecast maps from the operational run of the GFS at 6E last night. Now, vorticity is a fancy word used by meteorologists. It kind of represents spin in the atmosphere aloft, and that in turn can translate to upward motion, especially in the eastern side of the vorticity max. If it's moving from west to east, you kind of look to the east of that vort max for an area of upward motion. That in turn leads to the formation of a surface low pressure system. And here we have a vigorous system over the mid-Atlantic region, just kind of sitting and spinning. In normal times, without a blocking pattern, it would have moved more rapidly up to the north and east, but because of that blocking pattern that's set up over northeastern Canada, is kind of forced to slow down and move very slowly from west to east, and that will prolong the windy and chilly conditions today in the mid-Atlantic region and all the way up through New England into the early part of the upcoming weekend. Again, in those higher elevations from the Adirondacks of New York to the Berkshires of western Massachusetts and the green and white mountains of northern New England, significant wet accumulating snow today. And here's that upper level system associated with the snow out in the Rocky Mountains and the western part of the Central Plains. Let's move forward here, and it finally pulls out by the time we get to midday tomorrow, late day on Saturday, and the weekend is shaping up to be fairly decent for this time of the year from places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, even up across New England. They'll have some improvement this weekend. Some sunshine, certainly milder conditions than what we'll experience in the northeastern quadrant of the nation as we end the work week today. Windy, colder than normal today, but a little bit closer to normal by the time we get to Saturday afternoon and Sunday. But there's more energy in the upper part of the atmosphere that we'll have to watch over the next several days. Here's one system here by the early part of next week moving into the eastern states, and yet another one showing up here over the northern plains, and that's associated with that next cold air outbreak. This is cold air with upper level energy associated with it, and that cold air is charging to the south and east. Well, let's now take a look at the surface forecast maps from the 6E GFS model run and kind of a wintry look to this particular forecast map for this morning here. Snow shown in blue, again from upstate New York across New England. Snow out in the middle part of the country all the way into the Rockies. 29 degrees right now in Denver, for example, and they have some snow there. And a very windy and cold day on the back side of this upper level low that again is a very slow mover thanks to that blocking pattern to the north here. By this evening, early part of tomorrow, the snow generally winds down, but there certainly can be some lingering snow shower activity over the Colorado Rockies, for example, as we begin the upcoming weekend. A fairly decent weekend shaping up in the I-95 corridor region from D.C. to Philly, New York City, to Boston in the wake of that departing coastal storm. Then we go into the early part of next week, and a couple of areas to watch here. This is an area of moisture in the form of rain that moves over the Tennessee Valley, tends to weaken somewhat by the time it reaches the eastern states early next week, but certainly can be some shower activity on Monday in the mid-Atlantic region. Here's that next strong cold front. A lot of cold air compared to normal up across the upper Midwest, the northern plains, the Rocky Mountains, and more accumulating snow, likely with that strong cold frontal passage here. It charges to the south and east, and here's the cold frontal system by the time we get to the middle part of next week with some snow behind the surface front, and that front pushes into the eastern states the middle of next week, and then we have another cold air shot for places like D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City by the time we get to Wednesday night and Thursday of next week. So certainly a colder than normal pattern. Looks like it'll continue for at least the next 10 to 14 days or so for much of the eastern two-thirds of the nation. And accumulating snow today up across the higher elevations of New England, eastern New York, all the way to New England mountains, and out across parts of the central Rockies and central plains, with some snow from Denver all the way into the western part of the central plains. So that's it for now. For PerspectiveWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.